Welcome, truth seekers and trailblazers, to the Bigfoot, Wildman, and Boogers show, the podcast where shadows move, legends breathe, and Bigfoot might be closer than you think. Every week, we trek deep into the unknown, diving into the eyewitness accounts, breaking down the evidence, and exploring the mysteries behind North America's most mysterious cryptid.
We're here to bring you real encounters and all the wild, weird, and wonderful things that go along with Bigfoot, Wildman, and Boogers. Whether you're a diehard believer, a backyard camper, or just curious, we're thrilled to have you with us.
Before we begin, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It helps us grow the tribe and bring even more wild encounters out of the woods and into your ears. Now grab your gear, steady your nerves, and let's take the first step into the woods with Marc DeWerth. Hello.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you this evening?
Oh, aggressive as always, but good. I appreciate it.
Good.
Be aggressive as always. I love
right.
I'm gonna steal that.
Yes.
That's great. Well, Marc, you and I, we met a long time ago at one of Charlie Raymond's expeditions.
My bestie.
Yep, your bestie. I got to hear you speak that weekend and learn a lot of things about you. So, I know you've been doing this a long time and you have your own conference that you do and all kinds of things. So, let's jump into it. Tell us how you got started in all this and, where it all began for you.
Well, it began in Rocky River, Ohio, back in it would have to be the 1980s. I was every Friday evening, we would go over to my grandparents' house who resided in Rocky River. And every Friday evening, my grandpa and I would watch TV, in their TV room, as they called it. And we would watch shows like Sanford and Son, Chico and the Man. And just the Jeffersons, and just he liked Kojak. Things like that. But every Friday there would be a show that came on hosted by a guy named Leonard Nimoy called In Search Of. I remember sitting on my grandpa's lap. I would think I was like in third or fourth grade, probably fourth grade. And they were talking, Leonard Nimoy comes by and the preview it showed the Patterson-Gimlin film of Patty walking across Bluff Creek, and it said Sasquatch in North America and Canada. Is it real? And I remember watching that episode with my grandfather, watching that film and the witnesses they were talking to. And I remember going, Grandpa, is Bigfoot real? And my grandpa was like a very well-educated man, very good man, loved to read, was very thorough with everything he did. And he looked at me and he says, you know what, Mark? He goes, I've seen newspaper clippings in Ohio about alleged Bigfoot sightings or ape sightings in the States. So maybe they do exist. And I remember hearing that out of his mouth was like basically saying it was okay to look into the subject matter. Right. So the following Monday, I went to Hilliard Elementary School in Westlake, Ohio. We would have our library time every day, like maybe 30 minutes where you're allowed to go in the library and swap out books. And I remember thinking to myself, Bigfoot, but, also being embarrassed about the subject matter, not being a cool, subject. Right. How do you ask the librarian where to find books on that subject? And lo and behold, I asked the librarian if I figured, well, do they have any books on Indian legends? Thinking Native American legends, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, because they mentioned that in the show. And the lady took me over to a section. She says, well, if we have anything, it'll be over in here. And I remember seeing the word Loch Ness on the side of a book. So I kind of knew I was in the right area, and I started looking around, and lo and behold, I'm going through the library and I see this sitting sideways.
I love it.
Which is Sasquatch Apes Among Us by John Green. And I remember pulling the hardcover edition of this out, looking it over, seeing the Patty film on the front, and looking on the back of the map here. And it says Ohio, like 17, 18 sightings. I actually absolutely flipped out. So immediately I checked the book out, and it was like, this was probably the first book I ever took the time to just take it home, and every waning minute I had I was reading this book.
Every bit of it.
And that's why to this day I call this book the Bible of Bigfoot, because, not only did John Green change my life, I eventually met him at the Cleveland Sportsman Show. I think it was in 1984, and my grandpa took me as a treat, and there was him himself, and I got my hardcover edition by him signed. Cool. And lo and behold, once the early 90s came around, I was heading to BC, staying with the Greens and learning everything there is to know about Sasquatch evidence collecting, listening to the interview with Albert Ostman, the Ruby Ridge incident, all these famous incidents that took place, and to hear the actual interviews and just see the track casts and all that was just absolutely amazing. And, I was very hooked on the subject. And the funny thing is, as I grew up in high school, middle school, all that, everyone knew I was into Bigfoot. So they kind of, said, like when the midnight movies would come to the movie theaters, we go see The Legend of Boggy Creek. We go see Sasquatch. We go Mysterious Monsters, all those movies, that everyone loved to go see. Oh, especially the one I really liked was Creature from Black Lake. Great movie with Jackie Lim in it. Fantastic movie. And of course, so everyone, kind of knew that. And it's funny because my grandfather he was like, anytime he would go over, do you guys remember when they had the old TV guides?
Yes.
Well, he would go over with the magnifying glass, and if he saw any Sasquatch or Bigfoot programs, he'd leave the message, a message on our old tape machine. Hey, Marky, it's your grandpa. There's a Bigfoot show at 12 noon on Channel 5. So I would, it's funny because some of those shows had like Robert W. Morgan on, Peter Byrne, DeHenden, all these people that I eventually got to know all of them and meet and hang with them and do Bigfoot stuff with them. So it's kind of like a full circle dream come true. And but then the funny thing is that in 1989 I was going on a date with some chick, and she's like, hey, come to my family reunion. And I go, where's it at? She goes, Tippecanoe. I go, where the hell's Tippecanoe? And she goes, oh, well, it's south of New Philadelphia. I was like, well, where the hell's New Philadelphia? South of Canton. Oh, I know where that is. Pro Football Hall of Fame. And lo and behold, so we go down there, and it's so funny because I never thought of Bigfoot at all. I mean, really, once I got out of high school, I was just so involved with working in school and everything like that, and dating chicks and all that boring stuff, if I should say. And then I remember we're driving down 77 south of Canton, get through New Philadelphia. And it was like all of a sudden Ohio's topography just went from this kind of flat, kind of little, just rolly type thing to these big, expansive rolling hills. And I was absolutely blown away what I was seeing. And during that time and during that drive, as we went through Uhrichsville and Midvale, heading down toward Tippecanoe, my Bigfoot meter turned on. Because I'm looking at these hills and this woods, and it's like, I never knew Ohio had terrain like this.
Right.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, this must be like Bigfoot area. And of course, the whole time I'm thinking Bigfoot as we're driving and everything. And then we finally get down to this property, and it's right on the edge of Clendenning Lake in Tippecanoe, Ohio. And it's middle of nowhere. Even today, if you went down there on State Route 800, it is very remote. And they actually have a road down there that I noticed a few months ago called Red Eye Shine Road or something. It's kind of funny, but to make a long story short, so I met her Uncle Bob and her Aunt Betty, and they had I'd say about 200 acres. Kind of sat in a bowl with forest along the hills on the ridges, and he had about 25, 30 Black Angus cows that he played around with. He worked at the brick mill in town, so the cows were just additional income. And so I remember being in the barn with them, trying to think, how do I ask this guy if there's any like Bigfoot around here, and without saying the word Bigfoot. So I finally said, hey, Bob. And he goes, yeah, what? I said, any strange animal reports around here? And he goes, well, what do you mean? And I said, anything out of the normal, unusual, not supposed to be there. He goes, well, we get a bear sighting here and there, a bobcat, but there's rumors of a panther over here, a cougar over here. And then he goes, the neighbor, my neighbor, he saw a bear walk across State Route 800. I'm like, really? Interesting. Didn't say a word.
Yeah.
We go in, it's supper time, and his wife, Betty, we're sitting at this table. There's maybe 15, 18 people, because there were other family members that had came in for this little event. And she goes, "Hey, Mark, I heard Bob told you about the neighbor seeing the bear walk across 800. I go, "Yeah, that's a cool story." She goes, "Do you want to meet him?" I go, "What do you mean?" She goes, "Well, he lives right down, like a mile down. We can go meet him in the morning," because we were staying overnight there.
Yeah.
And so in the morning, we zip down 800, pull into the driveway to the right, and it was literally the next farm down. That's how much land there was. And so we pull in the driveway, and Betty, introduces me as her niece's boyfriend, and he goes, "Come on in the barn." So as we were walking back, he was like a blacksmith on the weekend, so he was all full of soot and everything like that.
Yeah.
And I go, "Yeah, so tell me what you saw." And he goes, "Well, I was coming back from the brick plant." He worked at the same brick plant that Uncle Bob did, and he got off at the midnight shift, so he was coming home at midnight. And so as he goes, "I was coming down, and when I went one past the Dunlap farm, that would have been Bob and Betty's farm, there's a kind of a twist in the road that goes like this to bypass like a creek with an underpass." And he goes, "There was a bear standing on the left side of the road there, and I hit my bright lights on." He goes, "It did the most amazing thing." I go, "Well, what did it do?" He goes, "It stepped across the road in 3 steps, and when it got to the guardrail there, it just stepped over into the creek." He goes, "I never knew a bear could do that." And I looked at him, I said, "Oh, interesting story. I appreciate it very much." And so he walked me back. And of course, what I thought it was.
Oh,
but
yeah.
of course, because, any proper investigator will never use the B word or the Sasquatch word. You let them tell you what they saw. You never lead them on. And so I just kept it at that. I get in the car, and Betty's sitting there just with the car smoking away as she always did. He said goodbye. We were backing down the drive, and I'm sitting there in the passenger seat, just kind of looking out the window this way, just going, "I cannot believe this guy saw a Bigfoot. He doesn't even realize it," which even makes it more legitimate, because he had no clue what it was.
It was
but
a bear.
what it did,
Right.
it's not a bear.
Yeah.
And so as we're backing up, Betty goes, I could tell she was looking at me, and I looked over at her, and I said, "Yes." And she goes, "What do you really think he saw?" And I said, "Well, what do you think he saw?" "He saw Bigfoot, didn't he?" I said, "Bingo, you said it." And then it was funny, because that day she goes, "There's a guy in Newcomerstown, Ohio, that has Bigfoot meetings. Do you want to go meet him?" I'm like, "Really?" We literally drove from Tippecanoe through all these Appalachian foothills all the way up to Newcomerstown, crossed the Tuscarawas River to get into Newcomerstown. I said, "How are you going to find this guy?" She goes, "Trust me, watch." We pull into the library, and there's a payphone. She goes into the library. They give her his phone number. We call from the phone booth, and Don didn't pick up. But I left a message, and she says, "Well, give him my home number and tell him we'll be home after 5. And that night he called, and I talked to him for probably an hour and a half, and I just couldn't believe all these stories he's telling me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's unbelievable. There's actually people seeing Bigfoot in Ohio. And then, then he told me about his newsletter, which I signed up for. And then he was doing monthly meetings, and I tried to go to them, but I still was very busy with things. And it took me a few years before I actually made it to one. And when I finally did, I remember I was sitting down the basement of my one house in Strongsville, Ohio, and my girlfriend comes up and says, "Hey, look, it says Bigfoot Conference today, Newcomerstown. Do you want to go?" I'm like, "Yes, let's go." And probably that's the funniest story ever, because when you go to a Bigfoot conference, what do you do, or like, what do you dress like? This is in like 1994, 1995.
Right.
Well, I mean, what do you do? So here's me. I'm dressed like in a collared shirt, a cardigan, slacks, and she's dressed in this fancy outfit and everything. We go walking into this Union Hall on 624 Heller Drive, and I remember like walking up the steps, and it looked like it had like a mine shaft underneath the steps. You couldn't see down, but you could hear like monsters down there waiting for you to fall. And coming down this little corridor, this dumpy old building, turning right, and there was about 45 people in there. When we walked in, they were all dressed like typical Bigfoot people do today.
Yeah.
They turned and looked at us, and I said to her and her, "I think we're dinner." And then finally, Don Keating was at the top of the room, and he looks, he goes, and he heard me say something, and he looks over, he goes, "Do I know you?" I said, "My name is Marc DeWerth." He goes, "Oh, Mark, how you doing?" And as soon as he said that, the people that looked like they wanted to eat us, their teeth went back in, and then they were back to being normal. So, but it was amazing, because there were like 40, 45 people from all over 5, 6 states talking Bigfoot, talking personal experiences. And we sat there and listened and listened. And I just was shocked on the sheer amount of people that were claiming incidents and things like that. So it was just, blew me away. At the end of the meet, I told Don, I said, hey, if you ever need any help with an investigation, let me know. I'm very flexible who I work for and everything like that. And I have a Jeep and all sorts of equipment and stuff. And so lo and behold, a few weeks goes by, he calls, there's a fresh sighting on 541 near Kimballton. And we went out and investigated the Debbie Brill sighting of her driving down, I think it was 541, and the Bigfoot came across the road and went up on the embankment. And and after that, the rest was kind of history, and I became heavily involved. And, so now we're talking, going to be 31 years of actual in the public view, even though I started looking into it in 89.
Yeah.
So think of all the years, but yeah, so it's been a whirlwind. It's been great. I mean, I've met so many great people. I've learned so much stuff and seen people come and go. And, obviously, my friend, Dr. Meldrum, passed very suddenly, very sad times. And, it's unfortunate. I got to meet all these people, DeHinden, Peter, John, and they all, it's like y'all had to say goodbye to all of them. And it's Grover. I mean, I used to go see Grover we're in Pullman, Washington, at Washington State. And he was funny, but that'd be for another day. I could talk about that for months. But yeah, so I mean, that's pretty much the how it really got me into it. And all these years later, I took over the Bigfoot conferences, eventually when Don got out of it. And, I've just, basically I have it set up where it's very comfortable to do. It's not a high stress event because it sells out like that. Yeah. And everything fills up like that. And it's really just, I try to make it as educational and friendly as possible. So people who want to learn, especially new people, can get, potentially, and I'm not saying one speaker is better than the other, but I try to really do the scientific end, because I think that if you start with the science base, it will help people better understand things. And I think education is super important.
Absolutely. That's kind of what we do here with ours too. It's more about, the scientific end of it and bringing the local guys in too, for people to meet
of course.
And then, we do ours a little bit different. We actually take them out on an expedition for a few days afterwards. Not everybody, but take about 30 people and go out to private property and actually teach them how to cast and track and, set up audio and things like that. I mean, give them a hands-on experience, because that's the only way they're going to learn.
Well, of course, because evidence collection is usually the weakest point of the Bigfoot, community, let's say, improper techniques and things like that. And, and I'm the curator for the BFRO in Ohio. So we do a lot of expeditions. I have some of my people I brought into the organization. They host expeditions. And of course, I go and show up and help and everything like that. But we have a couple expeditions every year here in Ohio that, I mean, not only are they well attended, they're very successful. We get a lot of stuff happening, including, alleged Bigfoots coming in camp at night. A lot of scary things have happened, but we got a really good area. And once again, it's all about teaching people proper techniques, teaching people how to use a recorder properly, long duration, casting, everything like that. And yes, there was a day I was very hands-on, making molds for people and things like that. And now I'm just lazy and let someone else do it. That's what I basically do. So, but that's what happens as you get older, unfortunately.
Absolutely.
Delegation.
Delegation. Exactly. I was always criticized not being a good delegator. And I learned to, when people say, hey, I want to help, accept it. Don't just sit there. Oh, I'll be good. No, everyone wants to help, and that's great. It's good to have people that care.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Mark, have you ever had a Class A sighting yourself?
I saw one in broad daylight in 1997 on April 20th. And I wasn't even looking for Bigfoot that day. We were actually looking for an alleged badger den. The previous hunting season, the last day of gun season in 96, we were at the deer check station. I think it was called the 541 Beverage in Coshocton County. And I happened to put one of my Bigfoot business cards up on the bulletin board thinking no one saw me do it. Well, someone did. They read it. They came over. Hey, I saw you put this card up. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. I'll take it down. He goes, oh, no. He goes, I've never seen Bigfoot, but I've heard stories about it. He goes, but are you guys into anything else? I go, yeah, like cougars, anything unusual that's not supposed to be there. And he goes, what about badgers? I said, badgers? He goes, yeah, my buddy and I were back going to go fish this strip pond, which was way back off of, it would be County Road 141 in near Woodbury, actually near Wills Creek, near Wills Creek Lake, 141, and that would be County Road. I think it's County Road, is it 40, 41? I can't remember. It's been so long, but I know it's 141 and another road. And there's an old high wall back there from the old strip mines. Okay. And if you go about a mile back in front of the high wall, there's some coal piles still back there, way back there, maybe a mile and a quarter. But there's all these strip ponds that were left that eventually the ODNR went in and cleaned them all up and introduced fish. So people would go hike way back there to fish them. Right. And well, this guy and his buddy were going back there to fish apparently. And lo and behold, they saw a couple badgers, which is not supposed to be in Ohio, especially in 1997. Right. And in eastern Ohio, to even more is less probable, let's say. So in April '97, we were screwing around on a Sunday. I remember that year vividly because it was so wet. Like that was like our first weekend we did anything in the field because all our areas were either flooded, mud pits, washed out. You couldn't get through roads or anything. And it was finally dry enough where you could actually do something. And I remember we went to our normal hot spots in Coshocton County and near Woodbury Wildlife Area. And I remember thinking, well, nothing's happened. It was just a nice day. We actually got to hike around, check some of our areas. And so I was thinking about going home because it was, and so was the other people that were with me. And I said, hey, you want to go check the badger report down there on a place called Wills Creek? I go, I don't know how to get there. And my buddy says, oh, I know where that is. Here, I'll lead. And so he went in one car, me and another guy went in another car. And we got down to Wills Creek. And I just followed the directions that the guy sent me. And, how to get there, because I wrote it all down on a pad of paper where he said, park here, you'll see my Jeep ruts go back down where the trailhead begins. And lo and behold, I come down 141 off of State Route 83 South. And I'm coming down into the wildlife area, looking to the left like it says on the sheet. He says, look for two big ruts because he had giant, like 34-inch tires on his Jeep. And they drove back as far as they could before they walked the rest of the way in. And lo and behold, you still saw the ruts because it was late, fall. And so it obviously, the mud was still there or the evidence of something driving through. So we followed that back. And a good mile back was this big coal pile he told us about in the middle of all this woods. And, it was just a normal day. It was about 50 degrees, mild sun, it was sun out, a little bit of wind. I was wearing a windbreaker and jeans, I remember. And my buddy goes, hey, he goes, I'm going to head back to my car because there was also the first bald eagle pair was nesting on the other side of this Wills Creek Lake. Well, he wanted to go and get a shot of that so bad. So he goes, I'm going to head out and I'll head over to there and we'll just meet up a little later. And so he headed out, and it was funny because even though it was a little bit over a mile back to the road, when he got to his car, remember when Motorola came out with those first FRS radios? I think Radio Shack sold them. Well, we have the Radio Shack brand one. Those were actually pretty powerful. Mm-hmm. And when he got to the road, he goes, hey, I'm back at the road I'm going. And the funny thing is you're over a mile away, but you're kind of in this holler. So when he drove down the dirt road to leave, it sounded like his car was literally like 20 feet away because of the reverberation. Right. And you could hear him actually drive away and just disappear. And it's like, it was so weird how sound traveled. So he eventually you could hear nothing anymore. And me and the other guy were just sitting there BSing. He goes, well, what do you want to do? And I said, well, we came in on the lowest tier here of this strip mine because the strip mine's kind of tiered like a staircase. And I said, well, if we just go on the center one here, all the tiers are going to lead down to the road eventually because they follow the same contour of the big high wall to our left. Right. I said, well, let's just go down the center one. So we started just hiking. And as we were going out, within no more than a couple minutes after leaving where we were standing by the coal pile, we started hearing all this movement up to the left of us on the next tier above us. And as we continued on, we would go, we'd hear noise, we'd stop, whatever was making the noise would stop. So I looked at my buddy and I said, well, it's obviously a whole bunch of deer are bedded down and we're spooking them out and so on. So it went on a couple more times and I finally said to him, I said, hey, why don't we just do this? One of us take the lead, wait 5 minutes and we'll spread out and we'll see the deer for sure. Let's do something like that. He goes, okay, cool. And lo and behold, he goes walking off and I was just sitting there like on a fallen log, just sitting there doing nothing, literally. And, so I decided, I said, well, it seems like enough time went by and I stood up and I started to hike. And I mean, literally within 15 seconds of me starting to walk right in the same area up on the tier above us, I could hear all this movement again. So I stopped and looked up like this. Okay, just kept going. And as I would go, I'd slowly hear something kind of moving too. I'd stop, it would stop. And it just went back and forth, back and forth. I'd stop, it would stop. I'd go, it would go. And then I thought to myself, oh, don't tell me. Well, and of course, what's going through my mind, that there was rumors of a panther down there.
Oh, okay.
And I'm thinking, don't tell me it's a big cat playing cat and mouse. And so of course, I'm looking in my pack and I have like a can of bear mace. So I thought, well, I'll pull this out, have it ready. And if something comes, I'll have some form of defense because I don't pack. I maybe had a pocket knife if I'm lucky. Yeah. And so I kept going. And as I was going, I could hear the movement. As I would stop, it would stop. And this went on for a while. And eventually I could see all the downgrade going down toward the dirt road in the distance. So that means all the trails of the strip mine were going to converge down to get down to the road. And the strip mine then would, the actual high wall turned this way. And I remember thinking to myself, whatever it is, if I run, it's going to chase me.
Yeah.
Especially if it's a cat. And so I started going down the decline, and for some reason, something told me to just sit down and when I say trail, it's just more like the tier. And I sat down and I was listening. There were some pines to the left side of me and I was sitting by them listening. And of course, as I was expecting to hear this thing following me, what do you think happened? Nothing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, don't tell me. Oh, then, obviously I scared whatever it was away, the deer away. And I was just getting ready to stand up. And when I did, I hear plain as day, right over to the left of me, above me, crunch, crunch, literally past me, crunch. And right away I said, oh, geez, it's a person because of the footfalls.
Right.
And of course, in that part of Ohio, in the 90s, there was a lot of recreational drugs being grown along those hills and strip mines. So they had people that would guard those drugs. And so I thought, well, maybe when we were back at that coal pile, that there was maybe a pot crop back there. We just didn't notice it because we didn't know what to look for. Yeah. And there was someone watching us the whole time. And and I remember thinking to myself, I'm squatted down. Okay, I'm going to stand up and look over and see who it is. And when I stood up to look over the top of the pines, lo and behold, there's nothing there. And I'm like, what? So I looked back to the way I came from. I looked down in the location where my Jeep would be parked way down on the road, about 400 or 500 yards down there. But you could see it because I had those stupid yellow smiley faces on my light bar on top. Yeah. So you could see those standing out in the distance. And then so as I panned back to the left this way, I noticed up on the next slope going up to the next tier up, there was something black squatted in front of a couple trees, and it was looking toward the road. So I'm looking at this thing like, oh my gosh, it's a black bear. So immediately I had this full pack on my back. I go to take the pack off to get my camera out. And as soon as I flipped and make some noise, I had one of those big like metal frame packs with the big hook up here. It made kind of a pop sound because I like to keep it real tight on the chest. And it starts standing up. And I remember as it stood up, it was sunny and the sun was hitting it, and its coat was very sheeny, very, black, sheeny hair. And when it started turning its torso, I was expecting to see a snout and ears. I see this whole torso turn, and I see the sun hit its side of its head. I see the ear right here. And when it turned and looked at me, I mean, literally, I couldn't see any neck, but when it looked at me, it kind of just goes like that, like, go, that's the only thing I can explain. Like, what are you doing there?
Right.
And I literally stepped so far back. There was a tier of a strip mine behind me. The next tier down, I almost rolled right down. And I took the pack and dropped it down. It kind of stabilized me. And I'm making eye contact with this thing. It's looking at me, and I could see it from the ankles up. And literally, I'm thinking, I have a camcorder right here in the bag. So I reached down like this to make a move for it. As soon as I made the move, it turned, it walked right up the next tier. Literally like it wasn't even there. And I don't know why, but in sheer excitement, I grabbed my pack, went running toward to where it was, dropped my pack by the tree it was squatted by, and had the camcorder out recording going up after it. And I finally got up to the highest point of the tier where the whole strip mine turns like this. And I'm filming because I could see the direction it's going, because I could see the trees all moving up top. There was no wind that day. And I'm like, and I literally was shaking so bad. My arms were like this, I couldn't even hold the camera. I was so like full of adrenaline, but yet terrified. Yeah. And as I'm filming this direction, I'm on the corner tier where it makes the turn. Something from my left up higher is coming down the hill at me. And the only thing I can explain it as, it sounded like taking a refrigerator and dropping it down the hill at me. It was coming like a bulldozer. And I'm like, holy, you don't want to know what I said. And I panned my camera to the left in that direction, and I'm filming. And my one buddy, he made it all the way back down to the Jeep. And I'm there freaking out trying to film something. And all of a sudden I hear my name being called. And of course my mind is totally freaking. And then I hear my name. I'm like, I kind of snap back into reality. Yeah. And I said, I'm up here. And here he comes. He comes walking up this hill, and he sees me with the camera, and he looks at me. He goes, "What'd you just see? A ghost?" I'm like, where? And I'm trying to explain to him. So he literally told me, stop recording. He could tell I was in shock. So I stopped recording, kind of got settled back down, and you could hear whatever it was up on this hill moving around. Yeah. So I start filming again, and I'm talking to my buddy, and I'm filming, and lo and behold, you see this thing, like literally, there's like some trees in the foreground, and I'm zoomed out in my camcorder VHS-C, and it goes like this. It's like, here's the tree, and I see this. It looks, and then when I say holy beep, I see it. It turned and literally made eye contact with me through the camcorder lens. It realized I could see it, because then it immediately backed up around the tree and moved out of sight again. My friends are like, where? And I'm trying to explain, and so on. But let's just say this: after that happened, my friends were like, I'm like, would one of you would like to swing up around and try to flush it out? No. And of course not, because they could see how scared I was. So we hightailed out of there. And all I can say is this: it's a 2-hour drive home. To this day, I don't remember any of it. I was like a zombie just driving, And then when I got home and put my tape in the recorder, my girlfriend's yelling at me, "How'd you mess up? Look, you should have been holding it like that." It was hilarious. But let's just say I learned a valuable lesson to always have your camcorder or camera out at all times. Because if I would have been able to have it out, I would have had a film that would have blown the Patterson-Gimlin film away. Right. I was like we came back a week later with like 10 people, and think of April 20th to April 27th in Ohio. The foliage went from this to this. Yeah. So if it wasn't for the one thing I did correctly, is when I went to retrieve my pack, I had some orange hunter's tape, taped it around the tree, and hightailed it out. So when we came back with 10 people the following Sunday, looking around, it had rained on and off all week, and it was totally different looking. And if it wasn't for that orange tape, I wouldn't be able to find where it initially was. Well, the good thing is when it stood up and turned to walk up the hill, the branch of the tree hit right off the top of its forehead. I could see it shaking as it moved and started going up. Well, that was 8'11" off the ground.
Oh, good grief.
Oh, it was a big one. It was a big jet black, beautiful looking thing.
Yeah.
And, but after that, I realized, and here's what I'll say this, and I know it's kind of mean, but I realized some people are actually telling the truth because some people, they don't tell the truth. And, and that's what's unfortunate.
Yeah, that's the bad part of it. When you're doing investigations and you're talking to people, you find those people that, no, they're not telling the truth. But then you meet the people that that are telling the truth, that have had these experiences, and that makes it's different. It's just different when you talk to them.
Well, and I always have a rule of thumb, because I've been interviewing people since '89, is if I run into those people again over the years, I'll even throw a little thing. Well, God, I remember about your sighting that, when it stepped over the fence, it did this. And then and they say I'm bullshitting them. Mm-hmm. The first thing they'll say is, no, that's not how it happened. It didn't step over the fence. It actually went around the fence. They told the truth, basically. I was trying to trip them up to see if they would something change. Because to me, if you had a real true Class A sighting, you're not going to forget detail.
No,
that's a life-changing event. And how many times I have heard people, submit reports or seen reports submitted, interviewed them, and it's like, no, this is not what they initially said. Mm-hmm. And because what happens, it becomes embellishing.
Yes.
And and that's the biggest problem, is that people want to be on these sighting shows and stuff like that. And unfortunately, that's why I don't do a lot of these, to be honest with you. I do not do a lot of these. You were persistent. And and because I know, like me, it's hard to message me. I usually, even to call me, you have to text me for an appointment.
Right.
And then you have to text me for an appointment. And because I just don't like talking on the phone. I don't like chit-chatting, actually, which most people don't. I was in sales and I trained salesmen, so which is funny.
Yeah.
But I like quiet time. I just do. That's why I go out in the woods a lot. I mean, I hike all over the state, all over the country by myself. And I'm an avid backpacker, endurance hiker, everything like that. And I mean, some people say, well, why don't you bring people with you? Well, there's other people hiking, say it's a big endurance hike. There might be 500 people, but I don't like to bring anyone, because I think of having someone with me as an anchor. Mm-hmm. And I want to bring an anchor with me because I move. So it's just how it is. But yeah, so now it's an ever learning process. Let's just say the Sasquatch Bigfoot field.
It absolutely is. And if you ever stop learning, you probably should get out.
Oh, of course. Or if you're in it, how should I say it? If you get so upset over what other people say, you're in the wrong hobby. And exactly. I think you should treat it as a hobby, because a hobby is supposed to be a fun thing to do.
Right.
And yes, you can be serious in a hobby, scientific in a hobby, but you can also have fun doing it. If you're miserable, get out.
Yeah.
That's the best advice.
Yeah, exactly. And there's so much drama, and there's really no reason for all the drama, just drives me nuts. I'm like, I hate the drama. I hate the drama. It's like, how about we all go out and do what we're supposed to be doing and stop worrying about what somebody else is doing,
Well, and people say to me, they're like, how come you tell people where exactly your sighting took place? Because I want you or someone to go there and have an encounter. That just validates more for me what I saw. So if I send the two of you out there and you see a Bigfoot, 20 years later, that tells me, well, I was in the right place and there were Bigfoot there. And that's how you validate things. So
absolutely.
But to hide a location, and I understand if it's private property, but this was state land where mine happened. If it's someone's private property, of course, just due to property owner confidentiality, you don't want to say that. And if people get upset about that, there's something wrong, because you have to respect your witnesses and their property and their privacy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that, that's one of the things I'm always telling. So, because I do I'm also in the BFRO, and I lead the expeditions here in Missouri. And then last year we went into Oklahoma, and we also did Arkansas, and we're going to do that again this year. And, I always bring speakers in to teach my people. We teach them casting, we teach them forensics and evidence collection, because that's the only way we're going to get anywhere is if we educate these people on what they can do when they're out there doing this by themselves.
Well, and of course, and like I say, I'm a big education person in terms of that, but one thing I always try to tell people, especially the ladies in the field, is I don't recommend to go by yourself, because it's not Bigfoot you have to worry about. Right. It's people. I do forestry work, so I'm in the woods all the time. Yeah. And I don't think for a second, even with earbuds on, I don't pick up the smell of someone watching me up on the ridge. These landowners, they're wondering what you're doing. They're up on their border watching your every move. And it's like, there's some creepy things, and actually, let's just say creepy people out there. Oh, and yeah. I've been very fortunate to always be aware of their presence. But like I say, when you're out in some of these areas, please, have someone with you. Always, what I like doing is if I'm going somewhere by myself, which is a lot when I'm doing forestry work, I drop a pin in the parking lot where I parked and send it to my family. This is where I parked my car. Absolutely. So they know exactly where I went in. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, that's what we tell people. We're like, don't go by yourselves. It's not because of, necessarily Bigfoot. It's going to hurt you. The human,
human aspect.
Yeah. It's like, yes, we do have a few bear in our area and things like that. It's like, that's not what you need to worry about. It's the human aspect out there.
Of course, 100%.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, now tell us a little bit about your conference that you do, Mark.
I do the Ohio Bigfoot Conference, which is at Salt Fork State Park Lodge every May. Let's just say it's just something that when I first met Don and he was doing the conferences in Newcomers Town, being someone that organized events up in the Cleveland area for different subjects and organizations, I saw a big opportunity to grow the popularity of Bigfoot, even though back in the 90s, Bigfoot wasn't that popular, but there were people that were in the closet that wanted a place to go to be able to tell their stories, to be able to talk where they're not going to be ridiculed and made fun of. And so I started assisting Don, with his event, which was more just a little local event, bringing in local people you really didn't hear much about right, these people. Right. And but because I worked in the travel industry out of college, I got free flights, all these benefits and stuff. So like we would bring in like Meldrum, for example. I flew him in. I flew in Ray Crow, Larry Lund, Peter Byrne, all these different people. Well, when you bring these big names in that are in all these, books back in the day, a lot more people started showing up and telling stories. And eventually the conference just kept outgrowing itself, going from a small venue to a medium and so on. And before you know it, we'd, have a couple hundred people, which heck, 200 people, 200, as I always say, 200 nut jobs all in one place. I mean, right. That's amazing. And then eventually, I kept telling Don, you got to move it to Salt Fork because they have that lodge. It's the venue, it's comforting and people like it. And so, and eventually he did. And when it did, it started growing even more. And then when he got burned out, I took over and I just said, well, now that it's where I would do it at, it's time to now do my marketing skills. And I just basically just kept tinkering with the event, making it a 3-day event, making it family friendly, having activities, having vendors, having, I to me, the most important thing is not only the kids in the families, but it's also, making the speakers feel like you're accommodating them. I've been to some events where they'll have the speakers speak 2 or 3 days straight.
Yeah.
Like for a 3-day weekend, it's like, well, I tell my speakers, you're only speaking on Saturday. Friday, if you want to participate in whatever you can. Sunday, if you want to, you can, you don't have to, because I want them to have a vacation too, to enjoy themselves, to see old friends and things like that. And I think people like that. And I remember the first time bringing Gimlin out, and Bob's just a wonderful, wonderful man. And I remember walking into the lobby of the Salt Fork Lodge, and I don't know have you two ever been there?
I haven't got to come yet. I
Yeah,
really
yeah. Well, walking into the lodge and there's Bob sitting there on a leather chair. And as people would come in, he'd say, "Hey, hi, are you here for the Bigfoot conference?" And they'd be like, "Well, yeah, everyone's here. Well, I'm Bob Gilman. I just want to thank you for coming." And he sat there for like one evening just talking to people. And I thought to myself, I said, wow, that's a nice guy. I mean, I'm glad that, we brought him out and everything like that. I mean, he just really was a touching person. And, I'm very honored to say that, to call him my friend, and, glad to meet him, and glad to see that he did finally come out and talk about everything, because him and his wife kind of got ridiculed for many years by the locals over the Patterson Gimlin film. And, but no, it's a 3-day event, and, we even have stuff on Thursday night. I mean, so like a lot of the real hardcore people come in Thursday, and we have a big cabin party, and just how adults are, just fun, and that's what I like. I want to have fun, but in the same breath, I want to make sure all the talks are very scientific based, very educational, and fun in the same aspect. And then of course we have vendors inside and outside. You have food trucks outside, and then on Sunday we do like a speaker panel town hall where people can come in and tell their stories and all that. And it just really wraps up a nice long 3-4 day weekend. And a lot of people come 3-4 days. And it's funny because over the years, people fall in love with Salt Fork because it's right in the middle of the woods. There's been Bigfoot sightings, 50 yards from the lodge. So yeah. So, I mean, imagine, you go out on your balcony overlooking the woods, and a Bigfoot walks on, and I'm not saying it happens, but it probably has in the past. So so when people have that, so guess what happens? They come back in the summer with their families, and then they stay longer. So then they fall in love even more. And I've had people even from California that ended up moving to Ohio because they liked it so much.
That's funny.
I mean, so it's but yeah, no, it's an event. And, I hate to say this, it's a very easy event. And when I say easy, I don't have to promote it a lot because it sells out like that. I mean, when tickets go on sale in December, I mean, one year, I think 400 tickets sold out in 9 seconds.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, literally your phone just explodes because of the transactions. I remember one time I was in the woods and my phone just kept making noise. And one guy said, "Why isn't your phone shutting up?" Oh, I said, "Oh, the Bigfoot tickets went on sale just like 5 minutes ago." And the phone was just boom, boom, boom. And, but yeah. So, and then of course, everyone wants to stay in a cabin or the lodge or the campground. I mean, so the lodge has 141 rooms. The cabins, there's 55 state park cabins real close by within walking distance. And then there's a 320 site state park campground within a 6-7 minute drive from the lodge.
Wow.
And then there's hundreds of miles of trails. I think Salt Fork hole there is about 30,000 acres.
Wow.
So it's big, beautiful. You like to hike, you like to horseback ride, ATV. They have all sorts of stuff you can do. Fish, boat, whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Last year, RPG came and he was my MC, and he also spoke. And then Brian King Sharp, and they were telling me, they're like, "We feel like family here," kind of like when we go see Mark.
Well, yeah, they've been there before. So
and
yes.
I said, that's what I'm shooting for. I want them to feel like family. I mean, I brought them into my house, put them up, take care of them, feed them, and then when we go to camp, I have tents for them. Everybody has their own setup, and I cater to them because, they're what is bringing the people in. I mean, essentially,
That's funny because I used to make Charlie do that for me. And when he'd invite me to the expedition, I said, "Well, I want my cot set up correctly," and he would have it waiting. It's so funny, but yeah, no, that's one thing I think you'll learn is this: at the beginning, when you do conferences, you're going to do just that. People, like, I remember like having Smokey Crabtree, Lauren Coleman, Daniel Perez, and this is many years ago when I was living in Cleveland, Ohio, small little house. They never went to bed the night before the conference. And literally, I just drove them down Saturday morning. They sat in my kitchen and talked Bigfoot stuff till all hours of the morning. I remember getting up with another guy who was in the other bedroom. They've been up all night. He goes, I went to bed at 1 and they were still going, and they never went to bed. Then we drove down to Newcomerstown, did the conference, and they still kept going. But it was like the most ultra ego discussion you'd ever see. They were trying to top each other with their stories, and it was
hilarious.
It was an amazing experience. But now the good thing is the speakers just get brought to the lodge. They get put up there, and they're self-sufficient because everyone wants to talk to them and take care of them. So it's always fun. So.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Mark, we're coming up on an hour here. I really appreciate you taking the time to spend with us this evening. You know, I'm hoping that at some point I can get up there and come to your conference. You know, that's always been something. I'm finding that my time starts to, you know, I've got all these activities going. So.
Oh, and trust me. Yeah. I mean, you know what? You got to have time for yourself. That's the most important thing, is to prioritize your health before your conference. I mean, I'm very, very strict regimen on being healthy and good diet and, you know, working out and taking care of me and my family. And, you know, where Bigfoot I put on the secondary level, and, you know, and also I do big trees. I own Big Trees, Ohio. I'm a nationally known big tree seeker too.
Yeah.
So,
I saw that. Yeah.
So I put a lot of time in. I do lectures on all different subjects, and you know, but like I say, you got to prioritize yourself first, because when you have a healthy life, you'll have a good time, and your conference will be successful, and people will be happy. Don't let it stress you out. And that's the thing. If some people stress, you don't need to stress. I'm doing one in New York State too every October. We did our first one just this past October. The New York, and it was our first one, and we had a very nice turnout, about 160 people, much more than we expected for a first time event. But everyone was so happy because and you know, and I always tell this to every conference organizer: the single most important thing for your event is be on time. Run your event like clockwork. If you have to have a trap door in the floor for the speaker, continue on, pull the thing. Goodbye. Next. Yes, exactly. Because you remember, when you advertise the schedule, your customers are expecting, hey, we're going to leave at 7 when the last speaker's over. Then we're going to go here and eat some, or, you know, whatever. Make sure you keep that time. That's so important. And, you know, because, you know, a lot of people like to continue on. So you make sure you have that, your MC organized, where they know when to say, hey, you got 5 minutes, and, you know, and so on. But as long as you have an on-time machine, you'll have happy people.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, like I said, thank you so much for coming and speaking with us tonight. And
My
hopefully
pleasure.
we will be seeing you in the future.
I hope so too. Well, I appreciate you having me, and I hope I didn't bore you too much, because I am boring.
No.
Great story.
But it was nice meeting the two of you, and I hope to see you. Reach out if you ever need any help with anything.
Thank you so much. I will.
My pleasure.
All right. Good night.
Good night. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, tribe. That's all for this episode of Bigfoot, Wildman, and Boogers Show. Thank you for wandering the woods with us today.
If you enjoyed today's encounters and want to keep these legends alive, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It helps keep It helps us keep track of the wild and legendary encounters that make our place so special.
We will be back soon with more mysteries, more encounters, and maybe some surprises hiding in the shadows. Until then, keep your boots muddy, your eyes on the tree line, and remember, show me your Bigfoot.